What's up, everybody? How's it going? This is going to be a very small video. Hold on, let me get back. All right. So they dropped a patch today, like today, and so I was excited to read the patch, and I decided that I might as well go ahead and excuse me, make a video basically saying how I felt about some of the changes on the patch list. I've only read like a couple of things on the patch, but I decided I might as well record to get my actual bases correct. So we're just gonna try to get as close as we can. All right. So first things first, you can now encounter up to one additional Olympian each night, as in the previous game. So before Hades 2 literally had a pool of 3 gods instead of 4 gods. In Hades 1, there were 4 gods. So essentially, what that means for people that might not be familiar, if I get Zeus, and then I get Aphrodite, and then I get like Hephaestus, that's it. Those are the 3 gods that I'm going to get the whole rest of that night. Like, I can't get any more. So this kind of made you a little limited on your build. I personally felt like this was probably the better thing for like Hades 2, because in Hades 1, all honesty, most of the time that third and fourth god completely pointless. Like, you literally hated seeing them pop up. Not to mention that in the grand scheme of things, Hades 2 seems like Hades 2 runs seem shorter. I'm not sure if they really are. I don't think they're that much shorter, but they literally feel shorter, because in the grand scheme of things, if you get past Morning Fields, and you kill Cerberus, you literally only have to go through 5 rooms before you get to Chronos, right? Which is more or less a little longer, because in Hades 1, you technically just had to find the bag. And if you found the bag, you just fight Hades. So you can technically only go through like 1 or 2 rooms. So not that much different. But you can make Tartarus longer by not going the predetermined path and getting rewards. So personally, I didn't really think that adding the 4th god was necessary. Partially because, as this next note would allude to, you didn't really get boons. Boons just didn't seem to show up as much as you would like. And most of the time, it was just either HP or mana, which isn't bad things you want to see, but it also just how many times you ran into Ashes and Psyche, and you were just like, I don't want this. This next room, like if I'm in a fork and I got 2 doors and both of them are literally just Ashes and Psyche, I'm literally like, well, my build's literally just being delayed. And the problem with that is that when you went up to the surface, it was even worse, because the fact that, one, surface is shorter, it's not finished, but also because Polyphemus isn't a problem, but fighting Eris without the setup you're going for does feel bad sometimes. And it's partially just because of the fact that by the time you get Eris to 25, she does so much damage, it's ridiculous. But by the time you drop Eris to 10%, she's literally just spamming the move that will just pop your Death Defy. So, as you can see, you are now likely to find 1 more boon or other major reward while in Erebus. So you will be able to get more boons. It's more common that you will run into an Olympian in Erebus than it was before, which was partly an issue. Increased invulnerability duration after your Death Defy effects activate. I feel like this is probably necessary. I feel like this is also a thing with what I didn't see in the part that I've read so far. It was a thing saying that you had less well, actually, they did reduce channel time. That's probably the actual thing because when you did some hexes, there was so much startup that you were just getting hit the entire time before the hex actually went off, which just feels bad. But having more invincibility during duration and your death defy after your death defy pops, probably for the best. Improved rewards of Ash and Psyche when you go into Oceanus and the Rift of Thessaly. I mean, I don't. I think this is. It's not necessarily unimportant, but I could see why somebody might complain about not having enough resources because fun fact if you didn't know, to get to 30 psyche you need 1,000, you need 1,000 psyche, but you also need like I think 100 and something to build the darkness you need to also do it. It's complicated. Same thing with Ash. You know, getting your cards does sometimes feel a little shaky, but I don't felt like that was that much of a grind, honestly. I mean, you know, at this point I have 70 total runs, 30 on one account and 40 on another, because the other one was when I decided that I was going to try to beat the game with errors showing up. And the problem was, I literally got to Kronos and I almost had him, but I could not beat him with the errors buff. And it made me just kind of, but that's besides the point. Point is, I don't really feel like the Ash is really that big of a deal if you actually are focusing on it early on and trying to get it when you aren't offered something better. But hey, you know, they increased it. Perfectly fine. You can now press and hold and harvest rapidly from crescent pick outcroppings. I mean, I feel like that's really not, you know, this isn't really necessary, but hey, quality of life, that's perfectly fine. Tula should now stay closer to you in encounters, especially in the morning fields. The morning fields is a really big area, and Tula literally feels useless. I feel like most people are literally just taking Tula. For those who might not be familiar, sorry, spoiler. I love how they blacked out like the locations, but didn't black out Tula. But Tula is basically the cat that you can encounter, that you encounter first by unlocking, I think, the fountain in Erebus. And then the cat moves to the beginning of the Rift of Thessaly on the surface. And then eventually you can befriend the cat. And the cat gives you a death defy and like has the effect that when you run by it, it starts attacking enemies close by. I feel like people are taking Tula specifically just because of the fact that it gives you an extra death defiance. Because once you get to something like the morning fields, Tula kind of just feels pointless because Tula doesn't actually move around like Phrenos. Tula just sits and only moves when you run by her. And so that's the problem there, is that she just seems very inconsistent in terms of being effective in a damage space. The fact they blacked out Nemesis, but didn't black out Tula, and for Nemesis doing something that, you know, by now anybody playing the game early on probably would have known. Nemesis no longer offers Death Defiance items if you do not need to refill the effect. I literally say that every time Nemesis literally throws me a Death Defiance, is that I'm just kind of like, why did you throw me a Death Defiance? I don't need that. Like, why can't you do that when I need it? But, you know, this is good. That's fine. Reduced gold cost of Celine's Boon when available in Charon's shop. Some people might argue that they don't really get this change in terms of continuity, because technically Celine is kind of sort of like a god or Olympian, but in the grand scheme of things, no. Celine's Boon sucks. Like, hexes are terrible. Mm-hmm. Like, before this patch, there were only 2 good hexes, and we're going to get into that later. And both of those hexes were only good because of the fact of because of 2 reasons. 1, they did not cost a buttload of mana to actually use. 2, they actually did something all the time, rather than some of the time. Minor adjustments to the order in which Olympians may first appear early on. I'm assuming this is just a change to the triggers between which Olympians pop up when you go on your subsequent runs after the first one. Same thing, same similar thing to Hades. You're guaranteed certain encounter. Like for example, Hades ones, you were always guaranteed for your first encounter to be Athena. In Hades 2, your first encounter will always be Apollo. And I want to say I forget, because the thing about your first encounter in Hades 1 being Athena, canonically it was because apparently Athena was the one that Nyx contacted. Uh, but the thing about it is that essentially because they gave you Athena, they literally gave the player Athena and then they gave them Ares, and they were using Sword, which is a perfectly good weapon for a certain duo, you know. But the thing about that is that in the grand scheme of things, it made it where if you were competent, like if you had booted up the game, had already played like 100 runs, and started over on a new file, it meant that since you knew about said duo, that you could just try to rush said duo, make a build out of it, get it either before or after Megara, and probably just look at the rest of the game and try to find a way to work around the fact she only had one dash right now. Now, when you get your second dash, it's just dumb. But, prime example, this game proves that we don't really need a second dash. I still would not hate it if we had one, but we don't really need a second dash. And sprint is definitely okay at avoiding things and creating that space. You just have to be a little more cautious, play a little safer in Hades 2 than you did in Hades 1, especially when we're talking about builds that abuse the fact that dashing with Athena's dash made you basically invincible, and Doom is dumb status and is better than Blitz. I don't care what anybody says. But moving on, normalized chances of finding fishing points in various regions. I don't really. It doesn't mean anything to me at the moment. Nocturnal arms and abilities, bunch of changes. Witch Staff special knocks away enemies, but is slower. Omega special is faster. So basically, I believe what they're trying to do is they're trying to both make it better for you when you don't take Poseidon on special, but also make it less OP when you take Poseidon on special. But still, I feel like the problem with Staff Omega Special is it's just one shot. You can't spam it, and literally not being able to spam it is what makes it rough. Point blank period. Like, it's just one big ball, it hits something, it does like mediocre damage. Well, it doesn't do mediocre damage, it does mediocre DPS. You will end up doing more damage per second just spamming special than you will trying to charge special repeatedly. So, it being faster doesn't really change the fact that throwing Poseidon on special is still probably going to be the best build that you're going to get out of Staff. Or, some people might even say in general. But, point is that Poseidon on special is pretty dumb. Sister Blade special stagger standard enemies longer. I don't really know why that is a necessity. But welcome to buff. Everybody that spams Sister Blade special is happy. Attack visual effects better match the hitbox. I'm pretty sure they probably added some like swooshes and stuff so that you actually know where your actual hitbox when swinging is. Umbra Flames attacks are stronger and faster. Omega attack channels faster and uses less magic. Special gives a speed boost, but it has reduced damage. Mega special can be channeled while moving. So it's no secret. Playing Flames is probably Torches is literally the most difficult weapon probably for anybody to use in this game. Mainly because of the fact that Special, as you can see, did not get the thing that really holds flames back, which is it still doesn't stagger, which is part of the reason why flames is hard. The other part of the reason is the attacks on flames kind of suck. Well, they buffed the attacks, they buffed the Omega, they lowered the magic, just all around buff on attack, little nerf on special other than letting you channel your Omega while moving and having the speed boost. Perfectly fine. Perfectly normal stuff here. Maybe torches will feel better after this. Maybe they'll just feel worse and we'll just still be using our spam special build and enjoying that reduced damage that they gave us. Moonstone Axe Rebirth Special provides lingering barrier. Not really sure what this necessarily means. If it gives you a lingering barrier, does that mean that it basically gives us the bubble? That, the invincibility bubble? But, okay, that's the thing. Omega attack channel is slightly faster. Perfectly fine. Good welcome buff. Was it necessary? In some cases, not getting the hammer, not having the hammer that increases speed definitely kind of hurt it a lot. So I guess having the increased speed will make not getting that hammer feel better. So Omega Special Channel is faster. Good, because it's slow as shit. Argent Skull, Omega Attack Channel is faster and hits a larger area. Cool. Even though that doesn't make me want to use it. Like, again, I'm still on the boat of doing the thing most people, I believe, do on Skull, which is attack, Omega Special. Collect your skulls. Repeat. So, I don't really think this makes me feel like I want to do Omega Attack any more than I already did. Because I didn't. Aspects of Eternal Arms. This is where we get into the aspect stuff. Aspect of Cersei. Adjusted activation and duration of Serenity effect. Now, they said they adjusted the activation and duration. Does that mean they lowered the number that's required to activate? And other question, from my opinion, this basically says they either increased or decreased the number to activate, but they also decreased or increased the duration it lasts. Which, basically to try to do that without actually knowing the numbers, if they increase the number that it takes to activate, that sucks because it was already a lot to begin with. Because basically, if you're not doing something like Apollo, or you don't have the double moonshot or the double wallop, I think is what it's called, where it doubles your attack. If you don't have those, this just feels bad. If they increase the number, because it was already bad as it is. If they lower the number, good. Welcome to buff. If they increase the duration, welcome to buff. If they lower the duration, but decrease the number, that's fine. But if the number got increased or is basically the same, and they lowered the duration, that's just basically a nerf. And that's kind of not fine. It's good, honestly. Serenity now adds Omega bonus damage that scales with this aspect's rank. Okay, so Cersei's is trying to make you use attacks so that you can spam Omegas. But as we just went over, Omega Special's not worth spamming because it just doesn't do anything. It does, if you can get Omega Special to do 400 damage, you're still not one-shotting half of the stuff in Tartarus. Like, I don't even know if you're getting through their armor in Tartarus doing just 400 damage. And you're not even doing like 400 damage every like second. It's more like every like second and a half. So the only thing you're really spamming, if you're spamming anything, is probably Omega. Is probably Omega attack. And if you're spamming Omega attack, I feel like your build has to be in line to the point where you have something like Apollo, again, that doubles your attacks. You know, Apollo special doubling your attack, or, you know, you get the hammer that doubles your attack. Like, you know, if you're not stacking up these things, I mean, this isn't necessarily a pointless change, and I'm not saying that it's terrible. I'm just saying that it won't really help you if you're not stacking up those attacks, because Omega attacks on staff just don't feel like, ooh yeah, look at this damage I'm getting on my special. Heck, this percentage could be something like 50 or 100%. And if it's 50 or 100%, I'll be wrong. Like, the idea that you could basically be doing like somewhere between 600 and 800 damage off of one Omega special on staff because of this, that's actually pretty high. Is it going to kill Chronos quickly? No. Because, you know, you're going to have to stick a move, basically. You will literally just have a better time spamming special at that point. But it's still going to be able to help you clear rooms. Because, again, when you're running Cersei, you don't care about your mana regen, because Serenity is going to give you the regen. Bonus, reworked. Each of your Omega moves automatically fires several times in succession from where you use them. Again, this is what you want. Like, this combined with that is what you want. This by itself, again, it helps. It definitely is a thing. But if it doesn't have this attached to it, and I don't remember if it does, if it does add damage to your Omega attacks also, then this is pretty high. If it doesn't, then this is okay. They put a thing by this, but I'm not. But because of the fact that I believe that was the situation, you will block again if the effect recharges while you are channeling. Block now takes priority over dodge and similar effects. Apparently, when you charged, sometimes you couldn't parry again because you were in the middle of channeling, and so you would just get hit. But, you know, good change. I don't really think it's necessarily a thing that's like, hey, this is the thing. But, hey, you know, welcome. EOS reworked Omega attack now fires a slow shot that occasionally creates damage blasts and also copies your specials. This is weird, but could be good, maybe. Now, this is where I'm like, oh yeah, baby. I don't know why they did it. I don't know what for, but oh yeah. So Malloy got reworked to where it now adds power and max life. That is fantastic. The recovery was cool. The like increased attack speed, I think, or the movement speed, fine. But if you're gonna take that way and give me power and max life, let me have Thanatos. Faster attack adds critical chance to Omega moves. Let me have it. These are just acts. These are just acts pluses. 100%. Like, you know, nobody. I personally didn't feel like this needed to happen, but it did. So these are just acts pluses, in my opinion. You can now earn glory much faster, but only by using your Omega casts. Improved control responsiveness during Omega Special. I don't really know how to feel about this because I haven't used Persephone enough to have an opinion. But I don't really. I'm not gonna lie. using Omega Cast sometimes just doesn't really resonate with me that often. Sometimes I would like throwing cast down. Yeah, throwing Omega Cast down. I have to I consciously make that decision. It's like running Solar Ring. Like Solar Ring is the only time I feel like it's a no brainer because or else you literally taking that boon is pointless. So I don't know. That's the thing. Keepsakes Moonbeam increase progress to a bonus to Path of Stars upgrades. This is probably for the best, honestly, because again, like I said, hexes suck. They should not cost the same as boons. They shouldn't cost 125 like I think they do, because it's just not. They're just not worth it. Especially when you think about the fact that 90% of the time, in my personal experience, even when trying to focus Celine, you don't really get enough points to even remotely fill out those trees half the time. So there's that. But what are you gonna do? Lots of hammer changes. We cut Marauder Wallop, replaced it with Rapid Thrasher. All your attacks become faster. Oh boy. We got rid of Double Wallop and replaced it with all your attacks gain bonus power. I believe Double Wallop is the one that doubles your attacks. And I honestly, if it is the one that doubles your attack, this is a nerf. Because again, part of the reason that Serenity is rough is because it takes like 21 hits to finally get an activation. And so if you're getting rid of stuff like Double Wallop, which I believe is the one that gives you like a bonus on all of gives doubles your attacks, then you're just going to literally make it a thing that I'm going to be like, that guy sucks. Getting the bonus power is cool, but if the bonus power isn't like a good number, not being able to double up my attacks is just gonna suck. Double Cataclysm, cut from the game, replaced with Mirrored Thrasher. All your attacks hit twice, but you take more damage. So they replaced Double Wallop with something else. Unless Double Cataclysm is what I'm talking about. And they say all your attacks. Now, from their standpoint, they have made it clear to denote attack and special. So when they say all your attacks, this doesn't increase your special damage. This doesn't make your specials faster. Remember that. Unless this is specifically lumping those two together, which, since they have been good about separating the two, we're assuming not, because if it did, it would say all your attacks and specials become faster. So this is just attacks. All your attacks hit twice, but you take more damage. So they replaced just getting double attacks and made it double attacks, but you take more damage. So kind of nerf. Rapid Moonshot also affects a Mega Special. I don't really think that. A Double Moonshot also affects a Mega Special. Reduced range, renamed from, Dual Moonshot. Changed from Double Moonshot. Also affect a Mega Special, reduced ranged. So this is what we're talking about here. And the problem with this is, you would say throwing two big balls at something, pause, would basically warrant saying that this is good. But I can't help but feel like, unless you are just doing, well, actually, you're not, because let's dumb it down. Let's say, theoretically, I don't think this is the case. This is not the case, 100%. But theoretically, we're talking about percentages. When we talk about boons giving additional damage, they affect what they call power, which is literally the base stat of the damage that your weapon does. So if, say for example, theoretically speaking, because this is not exact, because I'm pretty sure these numbers are not the numbers that are actually present in the game. So let's say for example that Axe is doing like 100. No, that's too much. They're doing like 50 damage a swing, right? So if I get like Aphrodite's boom and it gives me like 120% increased damage, we're talking about Axe now doing like a whole 110 damage, which is a lot. Close up, yes, but still a lot. But Staff literally has like a power of like 10 or 15. So when you're talking about Aphrodite giving you like 120, we're talking about Aphrodite giving you like 22 damage. And so the difference between 110 basically and 22 is a lot. So this is partially the reason why, on my opinion, and I think some people would probably say the same. In Hades 1, there were a lot of weapons that basically flat damage was better than percentage damage because of the fact that their power or their base damage was so low that getting percentage bonuses didn't really change how effective the weapon was. And that's why stuff normally benefited off of things like Dionysus, things like Ares to a degree. I forgot what the other dot in the game was. But basically, that shtick. And so I feel like Staff is one of the weapons similar to that, in that Staff doesn't benefit well off of percentages because its numbers are so low. And by that token, Omega Special's numbers are still low. And so throwing some big percentage on there like Aphrodite or something will probably just end up giving you something like maybe 60 damage a pop. And the fact that basically you could probably do 60 damage in the like second that you took to charge Omega Special by just spamming Special is why Omega Special's just bad. So I don't really know about this change doing anything in terms of making Omega Special better, because doing 120 when you could literally just do 120 and not use mana. And you might say, oh, but what about the Hex? Who cares about the Hex? Hexes suck. Shimmering Moonshot also affects Omega Special. Moonburst, increased mana regeneration for power shots. Blades, we cut concentrated fury, replaced it with melting dart. Your specials destroy a large portion of the foe's armor. Flick knives, your dash strike also fires several special knives in a fan pattern. This is probably really, I'm not gonna say it's broke, but people are probably gonna definitely want to try that out as soon as they play again. Rapid onslaught blades reworked to also reflect Omega attack, renamed from Marauder Slice. Hook knives, everybody's favorite. Slightly reduced speed of knives returning to you. Small nerf, but in the grand scheme of things, I don't think it's going to hurt hook knife builds, so don't sweat. Furious Fire, cut from the game. Mega Spark. All your attacks travel further and deal more damage. That's cool. Well, looking at, since I don't know what the damage numbers are, I can't say if it's going to basically make or break how we use flames going forward in general, but adding more damage onto the attacks is definitely a good direction to basically put that weapon in, because that's what that weapon needs to be more diverse. Inverted Spark, dash to make shots from attacks reverse direction and hit foes again. That's going to be a fun, interesting one. Your attacks knock foes away and have bonus power. This is also going to be an interesting one. Overall, all of these new hammers for torches definitely going to make things a little more interesting. Add some flair or spark, so to speak, to the situation. So I feel like I like all of these hammers for torches. Sustained spark also increases movement speed instead of reducing. Formerly sustained fire, anything that basically flips a negative and turns into a positive, definitely a buff. I don't know if it was necessary, but it's welcome. Melting coil, no longer fire straight, also affects special Omega special, formerly melting comet. This is probably a good change because firing your special straight really just kind of feels like double moonshotting. And it also just makes it really bad because unlike double moonshot, your specials don't stagger. So Origin Coil also affects Omega Special. Rapid Slash reworked to also affect Omega Attack, renamed from Marauder Slash. That's cool. Giga Cleaver removed two-stage channeling. Also, it always double fires but uses more magic. This is okay because it just kind of felt weird because of the fact that you basically had this like two-stage channel, or well, not really two-stage channel. It's that you channeled and then it made you channel again. Like you actively could see the double channel. So that's a good quality of life change. Remove damage bonus. Instead, it now hits twice. Hmm. I don't really know about that because getting the damage bonus was good, but having your dash strike hit twice, yeah, it's not bad. Yeah, I don't know about that. Sidelong crash, cut from the game, replaced with Mega Driver. Your specials travel further and you take less damage while using them. This is a weird change merely because of the fact that if you're still invincible during your Omega special, then this isn't necessarily a needed thing. But in general, if you're just using special and not Omega special, then yes, this is pretty good because of the fact that most people use their special to recollect their skulls after they fire them. So being able to take less damage while in the middle of regular specials is probably welcome change. Uh, Colossus Driver also affects the mega special. All right, so now we get into the bads, and this is why I wanted to record this in the first place. Because I got to this part on the patch notes, and I said, "Oh, I can't believe they did this." So, Wolf Howl, Twilight Curse, Night Bloom, Lunar Ray. Basically, in my opinion, and I feel like everyone can vouch, worst hexes out of the six. Because there's only two good hexes. That's Moonwater and Darkside. Why is Moonwater and Darkside the only two good hexes? Because Darkside makes you invulnerable, puts you in a state where you can still do a lot of things. Gives you access to these different abilities, and then after you buff it through the stars, through the path of stars, it actually just does mad DPS. I wouldn't say bad DPS, but it does good DPS. It's a good thing, makes you invulnerable, perfectly fine. It's basically double trigger, if you want to look at it that way. Moonwater, literally repeatable consumptions of health that can give you HP at first. You can upgrade it to give you mana. You can upgrade it to give you gold, and it doesn't cost like 75 mana. Darkside also made you invincible. Didn't cost but like 60, 75, maybe 80, 90 mana, which is perfectly fine. Things like Wolf Owl, Twilight Curse, Night Bloom, Lunar Ray. Lunar Ray, I think, was literally either 100 or 120, because that's what most of these were. They were either 100 or 120, and I think one of them was like 140, and I think it was the one that transformed things, but I think it's Twilight Curse. Ridiculous amounts of magic for an effect that was just terrible. Okay, like like literally wolf. I think wolf owl. Hold on. Since I'm dogging on them, I have to know exactly which one's which, so that way I can be correct in my statement. Okay, so Lunar Ray did cost 120. So Lunar Ray cost 120, right? Which was already obnoxious enough. So Lunar Ray costs 120. Night Bloom, which is the one that resurrects an enemy that you killed and will fight for you for like 12 seconds, costs 100. Twilight Curse is the one that morphs 10 susceptible foes, costs 140. Wolf Howl, which is that you rise up and crash down and do 200 damage. By the way, like 200 damage is quite literally the worst. Like the amount of damage you do on an Omega attack on Axe should not eclipse the fact that I can use this every, like, at base 4 times I do Omega attack on Axe after getting things like Weed Killer and the not Giga Cleaver. Yeah, Giga Cleaver. Getting things like Weed Killer and Giga Cleaver, I can literally use this every 2 times I do an Omega attack. Fully charged. But it only does 200 damage. I don't even know if I'm invincible while doing it. While I'm in the air. If I'm not invincible, it makes it even worse. And it literally just does 200 flat. Terrible. Literally terrible options here. Total Eclipse, which is the thing that does a giant blast, makes a huge AoE circle, does 1,000 damage over 4 seconds, which means things have to stay in it. Costs 200 magic. Hexes suck. If it's not Moon, Water, or Dark Side, Hexes suck. Now we're going to get into it. Wolf Owl, reduced magic requirement. That's it. It does not make it better. It still only does 200 damage. If I'm not invincible when I go up in the air, it does not make it better. I don't know what the path looks like, and I can't off the top of my head think about the things that it can offer. But the mere fact that all you did was change the amount of magic that it took to get it, don't care. Twilight Curse greatly reduced the magic spend requirement. Reduced foes afflicted, reduced cast time. So not only is it not affecting 10 people anymore, because we reduced the magic cost, they get reduced to cast time, which means you don't have to worry about standing still as long, getting hit. Does it work on bosses? Well, of course not. And you know what that means? Useless. Because yes, you might say, ooh, but it morphs 10 things. If, all honesty, at no point in Hades 1 or Hades 2 did I ever say, I wish that I had more time to do damage to these enemies in this random encounter. Like, I wish I had 3 moments of not taking damage. Because that's what Twilight Curse is. Twilight Curse is literally... by the way, once you start doing fears, like when you start doing fears and you get to the point where you realize that there are so many negative options that you have to turn on more enemies per encounter, this just becomes pointless. Because it was 140 magic and it only did 10 enemies. And if we're talking about specific enemies by itself, that's basically a whole school of those swordfish enemy things. That doesn't get rid of the other stuff that probably spawned with them. Heck, that probably doesn't get rid of the other schools that spawned along with them. So, again, that's not the problem with Twilight Curse. Twilight Curse is just, say it with me, bad. And reducing the amount of foes that it inflicts, all because you reduced the amount of magic requirement, which needed to happen in general. Like, all of these things, all four of these, needed their magic requirement reduced. But what they didn't need is that. They didn't need that. That just makes them worse. Night Bloom. Reduce the magic requirement. And the effect duration. Bonus damage and cast time. I don't think I just don't like reading these patch notes. You would think that all of these hexes are just that good. Like they're just game changing, build defining. Like all the boons that I've collected for the last like 20 rooms completely usurped by the fact that I have Night Bloom now. And it has reduced effect duration and bonus damage. And still only spawns one enemy. Moving on to the next obscene thing. Reduced. Like I said, all of them other than Moonwater and Darkside needed this because the costs for them were just ridiculous for what they did. Reduce the cost, but reduce the damage. Like they're doing it because like this is a prime example of overbalancing. Because of course you reduce the cost, and by such you now think that you need to reduce the damage. Because if you left the damage the way it was, then people might consider it broken. But the problem is that right now no one considers any of these broken. You know what they consider broken? Moonwater and Darkside, because Moonwater and Darkside are the only ones that were useful, because standing still for 4 seconds shooting a beam is asking for Kronos to kill you. Especially when that beam does less DPS than you would do not standing still for like 4 seconds. Oh, I'm sorry, 3. Like the idea that I'm not going to out damage 1200 damage in 3 seconds. Like if my build can't do that, I need a new build. It's not worth standing still. Especially when, I'm going to pop a Death Defy. I'm going to get invincibility frames. And then I'm probably going to go back to still taking damage because there's more stuff happening on screen. Like, it's just bad. And so you know what they did with the good ones? Increase the magic requirement. Reduce the healing on Moonwater. Hexes suck. This is why this needed to happen. This is why... Where is it? This is why this needed to happen. Hexes suck. And I feel like whoever is basically looking at it like this and making these changes for hexes on the balancing end, they're trying to basically make it where you're incentivized to upgrade your hex so that your hex is more beneficial. But your hex already didn't start beneficial. Again, I can just go over the list right now. Lunar Ray, I don't want to stand still for 3 seconds to do less damage than I would not standing still. Moonwater, the GOAT. Night Bloom, trash. It summons one random enemy and it could literally be the most weakest enemy ever, on top of the fact that if you haven't noticed, you still do damage to them. You summon something to help you fight that you're still damaging. Like it literally can die. Phase shift. Useless on Kronos. It lasts 5 seconds. It costs 150 magic. And it literally doesn't work on the final boss. Like, I don't know what the final encounter or the final boss fight would be for the surface. But if it's something that for any reason is blessed by Kronos' power, And phase shift also doesn't work on them. Pointless. Literally pointless. You paid 150 magic to do nothing. Twilight Curse. Morphin enemies for 140 magic. Less now, but for fewer enemies. Wolfhound. I'm not even going to go over why it's still trash. Or the fact that they've reduced it so that now it seems more appealing than Moonwater or Darkside. But it's still trash. The idea that I can do more than 200 damage, not wasting my time with this thing. Darkside, probably the best one since, all it did was get its magic cost increased instead of just getting nerfed somehow. So you're still impervious for 5 seconds. You can increase that duration. You can increase the damage of the abilities while in dark form. It's probably now well, correction. Moonwater will always still be better. Because being able to heal in between rooms for free is still going to be better than any of these shits. So, Darkside is probably now literally still the number 2, despite the fact that you tried to nerf Wolfhowl to try to change that. Total Eclipse. 200 magic to do 1,000 damage over 4 seconds. After 4 seconds. Does 1,000 damage. So it has charge time. And it only does 1,000 damage. But it costs 200 magic. Like, if you want to incentivize me going down the path of stars, one, you need to find a better way to work Selene in here. Which I think they might have done with these changes if you start seeing Selene at Kayron a little more often. Just saying. 2, you've got to make these better. Like, they're just terrible. Like, you can leave Moonwater alone. You can leave Darkside alone. Just leave those alone. Those aren't the problem. The problem is the rest of these suck. They're just terrible. But enough about terrible hexes. Moving on. Foes and encounters. Chronos. Vezro fixes adjustments. There should be fewer cases where he's unfair? I'm not sure what this means. Because they say various fixes and adjustments, but they need to be specific. Because I've watched this boss and other people's runs literally have the biggest issue when he takes enough damage to switch him into phase change, but he's in the middle of an attack. So what he'll do is he'll stop his attack, go over to where he's supposed to be for phase change, and then he'll just animate in the attack for a hot, 10 seconds. Just sitting there, doing nothing. And it'll go, and it'll do his phase change stuff. Like in phase 1, when you drop him the first time, he'll get his invincibility bubble. He'll go over to where he was sitting on the throne, and he'll summon more enemies and do his weird pinwheel ball attack. But the problem is that if he's doing the weird gust attack or the weird vacuum attack where he tries to pull you to him so that you take damage from the spinning weapon, but then you'll have the slash afterwards. If he's doing that and you do enough damage to him to switch into that phase, he'll just port over, get his invincibility bubble, and then just be stuck in the animation for that attack. And it causes a lot of weird stuff, because I know on phase 2 I've literally seen where he'll go over to phase change, and because he was in the middle of doing one attack, the literal special effect for that attack stayed on screen, and so it confused the person playing to where they thought the attack was still active, and it never went away. It was just always there, so they couldn't tell when the attack was or wasn't happening again after they realized that it wasn't happening anymore. So they need to be more specific about what exactly they're talking about here. because there is a lot in Kronos' fight that could be considered, unfair, and he is buggy a lot of the time. Infernal Cerberus, minor adjustments to some attack patterns in the first phase. Again, not really sure what that means. Eris, grenade attacks no longer wildly bounce around. I'm not really sure what this means either. Does that mean they're focused on you now more? I don't. Yeah, I'm not sure what that means. Polyphemus reduced effectiveness of mutant sheep. Um, there's a sheep that like blocks magic or something, I think, or just blocks attacks in general. It likes to get in the way sometimes during the boss fight. Not really. I mean, I personally didn't really see it as that big of a problem, but at the same time, it is annoying. And I remember I was playing a staff run, and it literally would just eat my specials, basically, like it was Freenos. So, eh, okay. Uh, Gold Wraith reduced accuracy and tracking of beam attack. I mean, personally, for me, I stay on Gold Wraith and literally just spam. And the thing that hits me more often than the beam attack is the like gold attack where he turns upside down and he starts throwing coins everywhere. That hits me more than the beam does. So, I mean, if this is really a big a problem, okay, welcome change. But personally, I don't really have to think about it. Slightly increased armor of Queen Lamia, that sucks. Increased speed, that sucks. Other minor changes, this sucks. Because 90% of the time it was just better. Like, depending on what weapon you're using, it is literally just better to rush the queen rather than focus on the other four things since they die after you kill her anyway. So this kind of sucks. That's rough. Reed Stalker, increased projectile speed and target distance, reduced rotation speed. Projectile? I don't remember him. Does he fire a projectile? I know he has this vacuum attack, but is that considered a projectile? And if you increase the speed of that, it already was kind of ass. Why would you do that? Warner slightly increased rotation speed, slightly increased speed while attacking. Hold on, maybe I'm thinking of the wrong one. That's not the mini boss, right? I'm not really sure what I'm not sure what the read stuff is. Increasing the speed of Warner's, slightly increased life and elite armor. All right, so apparently we just looked at. I can only assume that I believe the Reach Stalker is Morning Fields. We just looked at the Morning Fields and said, I don't know why these don't have this little air horn and mega horn thing attached to them, because we basically looked at the Morning Fields and said, what if they all just said, fuck you? Dire Shambler, reduced tracking speed between attacks. Hippo, self-destruct area should more closely match the visuals. It's still self-destruct, so who cares? But no, like this entire thing is literally just, let's buff the Morning Fields. Level design and environments. Driftwood resources are more common in the Rift of Thessaly, a further increase since last patch. Burning oil slicks in the rift thessaly will extinguish after encounters, though may be reignited. Okay, so I remember I killed Eris. I think the first time I killed Eris, she lit one of the oil slicks that was right in front of, or basically on top of, the mining thing. And so literally I couldn't get the mining thing because I would just basically die to fire. And I was already like low HP and I didn't have any death defies. So I was like, what is this? Adjusted oil slicks in some locations in the Mist of Thessaly, minor fixes at several locations. Fatalist prophecies, clearing original sins no longer requires choosing the very rare Baron curse from Chaos. Chaos trials, trial of heart attack, heartache, reduced difficulty and adjusted based on aspect changes. Trial of haste, reduced difficulty and adjusted based on aspect changes. Oath of the Unseen, vow of forsaking no longer helps ensure you quickly get duo. What do you mean though? Like, all right, so for those who don't know, Vow of Forsaking is the one that you can take in the Oath of Unseen that makes it where the boons you don't choose literally get erased. You can't get them again that night, right? And so what some people have been doing is that they have been basically trying to min-max their build by being like, I'm going for Apollo's Duo, or I don't know, I'm going for Apollo's Legendary. To get on the right page here, that means that you either have to take Apollo Attacker Special, you have to take Solar Ring or Lucid Gain, so cast your mana, and then you have to take Extra Dose or Supernova. What Apollo's Legendary does is that your Omega attack and Mega Special fire twice, but use more magic. So, you combine Apollo's Legendary with Weed Killer from Demeter, and with whatever it's called from Axe. You spend like at that point like 50 mana, 50 magic, but you just shit on things. So, as you can see by what I just said, and because guess what, Weed Killer is also a part of Demeter's Legendary, which only requires you to take either Attacker Special, if you take Nova Strike, if you take, let me just use the gods instead of saying the names. If you take Apollo Attack on, you're using Axe, base Axe, just to keep this not as crazy. You're using base Axe, which means you got your HP, you got your power. You take Apollo Attack, you take Demeter Special, you take Demeter Cast, you take Lucid Gain, so you take Apollo Mana. Doesn't matter what sprint you use because no one cares. You pick up Winter Coat. You pick up Weed Killer. You pick up Extra Dose. You now have access to Apollo's Legendary and Demeter's Legendary. Apollo's Legendary will make your Mega Attack go off twice. Extra Dose will sometimes make your Omega Attack go off twice. Weed Killer will increase the damage of your Omega Attack. The one hammer on Axe will increase with your damage on your attacks because it will double your Omega Attack. You will now literally get you will get Origination off of the fact that if you took Demeter's Cast and were able to get Cyclone, or if you were somehow able to also get Apollo's Days on your attack, you will now get Origination, which means you will be doing 50% increased damage on top of the fact that Demeter's Cast will freeze foes, and freeze foes with Demeter's Legendary will literally take 10%, will literally shatter at 10% HP, dealing damage in an area. on paper, dumb build. A way you could get this build for certain, because the problem is, yeah, that'll work, man, if you get all that. And that is right, if you get all that. And that's the problem, is that the possibility of you getting all of those things very small. And this also goes into my point before about why I don't really think that adding the fourth god to your pool should have been a thing for this game, because this game doesn't need it. It really didn't need it in Hades 1 either. It wasn't necessarily that big of a deal. But adding the fourth god to your pool in this game is definitely not necessary. Having 3 gods in this game literally just made it easier to do what I just explained. Taking Vow of Forsaking and letting Vow of Forsaking get rid of the ones you don't want, so that the only options left are the ones you do, literally made it easier to do what I just described. Them making it somehow, which I'm not really sure how, but most people did mention it, Vow of Forsaking really isn't a detriment. It doesn't necessarily make you have to suffer through. I believe the one in Hades 1 was it locked options. So when you got a boon, 2 of them, I think up to two would be locked. It wouldn't get rid of them. You just couldn't pick them, which means that you were always forced to pick whatever the game essentially rolled you to pick. And that was what was a detriment. That felt bad, which is why most of the time people didn't pick it. But Vow of Forsaking made it where essentially you would eventually get to the point where, prime example, I played a run recently. You would run through Apollo's boon so much, and you would forget about it. And so, or either if you didn't forget about it, you might get forced into a room that's Apollo, and you might completely forget or realize the game's gonna force you to swap. Because that's what that was. Is that I got forced into a situation where I had used up so many of Demeter's that I didn't even think about it. And I just took Demeter on a mini boss in Tartarus, and Demeter literally looked and said, hey, the only boon I have to offer you is attack, which was Apollo's attack that I had. And so I had to replace Apollo's attack, which literally felt oof, until I got to Cheiron and got an Apollo that swapped me back. Funny enough, that was the thing about it, is that because Apollo's boon was the only one that was left in his pool, because I had already annexed the rest of them, he had no choice but to offer me the boon back when I got him again. And the funny part about it was that it was heroic, so technically it was an upgrade. But that's the thing about it, is that Vow of Forsaking was the way that people were able to do things like make these mid-max, saying well-crafted, alludes to the fact that these were just very specific things. It just made it where if you wanted to be very particular and specific and min-max your build, you could. And the downside / trade-off was you couldn't get access to the stuff that you might have given away. I mean, think about it. If Extra Dose and Supernova pop up on the same offering, you're going to have to give up one. And theoretically, you might want both, because both are just good. So, making that decision technically is a trade-off. Getting, and the worst part about this was you still had the possibility of having an instance where you got like an offering for Demeter, and it was Ice Strike, Winter Coat, and Weed Killer, and you literally had to figure out which one you were giving up. So I wouldn't necessarily say that this needed to happen, because honestly, I don't think it did. But I know why they did this, because of what I described, which, the people could literally make stupid builds. But at the same time, I feel like when you get down to the idea of high fear runs, like the 32 fear runs, I honestly feel like you shouldn't do this. Because when you're talking about stuff like that, I feel like I need this. Like, I need you to look at me and say, hey, this is going to be difficult. So I made something that lets you make these high risk, high reward options and be powerful because you are literally playing the game in its hardest variation. So I understand why this change happened, but I don't like it, personally speaking. Menus and UI added many new icons for keepsakes, weapons, will of Charon offerings, and more. That's cool. It means the game's getting, more fleshed out. Perfectly fine with that. Insight into offerings, Charon now also lets you check each Olympian's list of offerings in the Book of Shadow while choosing their boons. Good, because Cauldron. Sorry, instead into offerings Cauldron. But yeah, because I don't know why it didn't do that in the first place. Because you do it in Hades 1. But good change. Good change right here. I like it. With the prior change, adjusted default key bindings for rarity. For Rarify, some custom bindings have been reset. Added a warning when you are down to your last use of Death Defiance. I mean, this isn't necessarily. I mean, that's not hard to pay attention to, in my opinion. But okay. Opening the Book of Shadows should show entries for nearby characters more reliably. This is also a thing in Hades 1. If you were like standing beside someone, if you press the button to open up the book, it would literally just go straight to them. So that way you knew how far along they were, what they needed, all that junk. You know, Makes sense. Good change, good change. Remove the unused grasp notification when exiting the altar of ashes while at a high grasp limit. Huh. Okay. Okay. I mean, it doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. It's a change that's kind of like, okay, okay, cool. Updated pitch black stone screen to use aspect specific icons. Adjusted input action bar layout at the bottom of the boon screen and similar. Added borders to icons for Selene hexes on the gifts of the moon screen. Okay. Added information. I look at this and I'm just kind of like, cool. Don't care. Hexes suck. That's basically why I did that. Added informational pop up when using F10 to report bugs. Other changes. Cool. Art and visual effects. Reduce some full screen flashing or strobing, such as from time slowdown effects. This is because of special spam on staff. Because if you had the thing that slows down time on staff, rapidly pressing the triangle button like that would basically, flash and, strobe like the screen because it basically was trying to slow down time even though you weren't completely charging the thing yet. So, in all honesty, like this is literally a product of special spam on staff. Now, I'm pretty sure in some other weapons, same deal, but this is mainly just a product of the fact that people spam special on staff, and that is the effect that would happen. Is that it would just basically be a strobe light on the screen. Uh, music and special effects. Add special effects for when certain active abilities such as Serenity are ready to use. That's cool. It's a good addition. Updated placeholder special effects for various keepsakes. Cool. Updated special effects for projectile collisions with Umber Flames Moros. Cool. Voice narrative. Unique voice lines should play more reliably when certain incantations are revealed in the Cauldron. Added voice lines when using Phase Shift, Celine versus Chronos, or trying to. Again, literally denoting how useless that hex is. More voice lines should play when confiding. Oh, when confining in Fritos at certain contexts. That's cool. Miscellaneous. While brooding over the family portrait in Crossroads, you may now snap out of it sooner. Cool. You can now fully control the game using keyboard only if you rebind, attack, and special. Much needed for anyone playing the game on keyboard. All timers now pause while in the presence of Kairon. That's pretty cool for like speed running and for like timer usage. Because the problem with instances when people have the timer on, they normally pause this game because it stops the timer so that they can debate over what decision to make. And the same thing works for Kairon's shop, is that you have to like pause and think about all the options Kairon's offering. And so adding this doesn't really make you, this isn't really a pointless change. This is actually a pretty good change for people that are like working with the timer or need that moment to like, collect themselves before they keep moving on. And so for like that situation and for like speedrunner and all that, that's pretty good change. An Anvil of Faith will no longer be offered in Tartarus if you have not found a Daedalus hammer. Uh, in the Hades flashback, adjusted timing of hint for players who don't realize they're in control. Oh boy, that one. Reduced requirements for the incantation power to pause and reflect to be revealed. Melanoy now respawns in the center of her magic circle near her tent. She was a bit off before. Improved compatibility with more types of controllers. Updated text for various upgrades and abilities. And then a bunch of bug fixes. Quote of the patch. Hecate was the goddess of the dark, of the moon, the black nights. When the moon is hidden, she was associated with deeds of darkness, the goddess of the crossways, which were held to be ghostly places of evil magic. Mythology, timeless tales of gods and heroes. E. Hamilton. Not really probably gonna think about these too hard, other than basically, well, actually, hold up, I don't like the first one. Fix a double up sight and sometimes doubling mystery boons. Oh, never mind. I don't like it for different reasons. I thought this was fixing it because it spawned something it shouldn't, but in the grand scheme, it shouldn't spawn this. But at the same time, wait a minute, why not? Necessarily like a, hey, why'd you do that? More just a, hey, that's good. That's fixed nightmare resources dropping unexpectedly in chaos trials. That's weird. Fixing mega moves occasionally becoming unresponsive after being chomped on by Polyphemus. It's just a bug. Fixed deadliest attack of Kronos, occasionally hitting when Melanoy was in a supposedly safe point. I would assume this is basically fixing one of the instant kill hitboxes, which, definitely, yes, thank you. Fixed Umber Flames attack, preventing magic regeneration before channeling Omega attack. Interesting. Fixed the Queen and Judgment Arcana appearing active while no other Arcanas are active. Fixed Hearth Game, no longer restoring magic if chosen as a sacrificial boon. Huh? Oh, a sacrifice boon. Okay. Fix certain later oath testaments for the Sister Blades, sometimes not appearing as expected. Fix cases where you can go out of bounds using the urgent skull in the battle versus Kronos. Okay. Fix more cases of some visual effects versus Kronos lingering between phases or after the fight. Fix Tula unceremoniously vanishing after you vanquish Kronos. Huh. Weird. Fixed additional issues with Sun Worshipper? Sun Worshipper. I don't know what Sun Worshipper is off the top of my head. In each encounter, the first foe who's okay. That's the one. That's the duo that he has with Hera that says that you spawn the first enemy you kill, essentially. Um, Fixed additional issues with Dark Side. Fixed additional issues with Chaos with Twilight Curse. Who cares? Hexes suck. Fixed a visual issue where Headmistress Hecate could appear to slide after snared by your cast. I saw that like one time. It was hilarious. Fixed spark of Ixion, causing a Chaos Gate to appear in Asphodel. Interesting. Um, Fixed golden bows, sometimes not marking all available rewards in the mourning fields or the fields of mourning. Fixed several narrative events that could play out of sequence. Fixed Odysseus rather rudely walking away while in conversation with Nemesis. Fixed Hercules sometimes leaping away forever. Fixed Millinois' voice reverting during her return sequence despite certain Circe enchantments. Fixed incorrect echo portrait in the Book of Shadows. Fixed incorrect music playing in some chaos trials. Or not playing as intended in some instances. Sorry. Fixed rare cases of a looping sound playing indefinitely. Fixed a rare instance when objects in the training grounds could overlap. Fixed several minor issues on the victory screen that shows when you prevail. Fixed additional miscellaneous issues when playing in ultra wide resolutions. Fixed a rare crash in which the effect of winter harvest could repeat forever. Oh, wow. Fixed various other rare crashes. Fixed several text errors. Other minor fixes. Okay, so again, the biggest thing to note about this patch is, first off, lots of general gameplay changes that definitely, completely welcome. Nemesis, Death Defiance, and all that jazz. Bam. Um, Weapon changes, also pretty much welcome. Aspects changes, we'll see what basically things go in. If I was just off the top of my head, Witch's Staff is kind of, sort of, still middle ground. Sorry. Again. I would still basically say that, in my personal opinion, my book, it's still axe, staff, skull, torches, sister blades. I know people love sister blades. Sister blades are cool. I'm not saying they're bad. I'm just saying that I personally just don't really like using them. I honestly like failing runs on torches kind of more than I do like using sister blades. And I think it's partially because of the fact that if sister blades gave me a second dash, I probably would feel better about them merely because of the fact that it would feel like playing Hades 1. But they don't really feel like playing Hades 1. They feel kind of different. But they're I'm not saying again, not saying they're bad. Just in my list, I still have them at the bottom. But and overall in general, Witch's Staff should be different slightly, but not necessarily that much. Sister Blades should feel about the same, if not slightly better, because of the fact that Artemis is better and because Hook Knives is technically not exactly completely nerfed, as you would expect from some of the other things that they did in this patch, completely nerfing things that were really good. Um, Torches, same, honestly. Well, actually, no. It will need to be seen if attacking is now actually worth piss instead of just spamming special. Um, Axe buffed. Axe is still literally big, like literally just big boy. Especially with this change to having power and max life, big boy. Skull, I'd say pretty much the same. Maybe Omega, maybe the change to Omega attacks will give it some variety. Keepsakes, no one cares because especially because hexes suck. Hammers, lots of hammer changes might change the way that you approach a lot of weapons, honestly, because I think that's probably yeah. I think the hammer portion is almost as big as the bug fix portion, and so lots of hammer changes. Look out for those. Test them out. Dual moonshot works on Omega Special, but I don't really think it makes a difference. Um, it's a suck. Point blank period. Like I don't know how much that increases. It says slightly increased, but honestly, makes it worse. Increasing the one on moon water makes it worse. Reducing the healing makes it worse. Buffing all of these, but also taking them away to try to balance out the benefit of the buff makes them worse. Like really, I think probably one of the ones that I found interesting about Lunar Ray is that one of the ones on the Path to Star I know literally make it where you can fire it and it just sits there and you can move around. And all honesty, that would be better than just it in general. But I don't believe that that's like an early one. I think that's like a late one. But either way, it's still kind of just ass. So again, you know, same old, same old. Hexes suck. Foe and encounter changes. Morning Fields got buffed. Ew. Level design stuff. Rift of Thessaly should be different. Feel less like ooh oil slick suck. More driftwood. Um, Chaos Trials. They got a little bit of. They got just a little bit. Vow of Forsaking got hit with the nerf hammer, but at the same time, I don't really know why. I don't really know what the alternative will be, especially now that Additionally, back to the whole build situation. Essentially, what's going to happen now is not only did you get rid of Vow of Forsaking, which make it harder to do that specific build that I was mentioning before, but I now have a fourth guide on top of the third guide, polluting my possible options of what I'm going to get every run. Like, imagine you literally had three gods all the way to Tartarus, and the thing for the mini boss is something useless like a Festus. Like, what do you do with that? So that's what I'm saying. I mean, actually, speaking of Hephaestus, Hephaestus is literally more useful than half of those damaged hexes, merely because of the fact that he literally like he's better than Wolfhowl, plain and simple. Like his boons literally are better than Wolfhowl. So honestly, I don't really like this vow forsaking change. I don't think it was necessary. Um, I don't think it was necessary to add a fourth god into your pool. But hey, from what I understand, apparently they're supposed to be adding more gods in general. So I don't really know what to say about that. But hey, if they add more gods, it kind of just makes that very specific mid-max build even less likely than it already is now that we've done these changes. Menu UI stuff, good. Art, visual stuff, good. Music, like all of the miscellaneous changes to the just general presentation of the game, solid stuff. Miscellaneous changes, solid stuff. Bug fixes, again, solid. So, I mean, the only thing that makes me just basically look at this patch and say, why did you do this? It's just this. Like, yeah, they added fourth guy, and I am kind of on the why did you do this thing on that one, but hexes suck. They tried their best to buff hexes in this patch, I think, and give hexes the diversity that they intended them to have. But this patch literally doesn't change that. They're still bad. I still don't want them. I don't. I literally will still look at Celine more than likely, and literally just keep moving. If I get forced into Celine and I don't get Moonwater, I might reroll. you know, and so that's basically my thing on this one. Is just the fact that, as far as I'm concerned, Hex is stuck. This patch overall is going to be an interesting thing. It's going to be interesting to play with the patch going forward. But high point for me personally, like my personal favorite part, Axe. Everything on Axe. Just like I don't care about the remove damage bonus, but instead hits twice. That's perfect. Just everything on Axe. Everything on X literally just smells better. Is what I'm basically saying. In general, the best part about this, weapon changes. Weapon changes, all of this quality of life stuff in terms of gameplay. Just in general, hammer changes, aspect changes, weapon changes. Probably the highlight of what happened here. Weakest part of this patch, the hexes. like hexes, like if I was to layer it in a thing on top, from top to bottom, hexes are on the bottom. The thing above hexes, Morningfield's got buffed. Like I wish that the worst thing I could say on this patch was Morningfield's got buffed. But unfortunately, that's not even the worst thing. It's hexes. Hexes still suck. Heck, hexes might literally suck more than they did before. So, yeah, patch 2. Um, can't wait until patch 3. Hopefully, by patch 3, we'll either get the third area of the surface, or maybe uh, because I might be wrong. I heard someone, I think it was Helion, said something about how supposedly they were supposed to be adding more things. More, there's still the sixth weapon that needs to get added. He said, and I don't know, I don't have a source, so I don't know for a fact, but he said something about them adding more gods. If they're adding more gods and they're adding the original other gods too, because Ares was already mentioned in this game. Like if Ares and Athena come back in this game and still have similar effects to what they had, of course, you know, that duo is probably going to be a different duo, and Doom is probably not going to be the same because Blitz and Doom are very similar, if not almost the same thing. So Ares probably won't be doing Doom anymore. Athena probably won't be doing Deflect. She could, because technically, no, she probably won't. Athena probably won't be doing Deflect. If I was to basically make a theory or prediction, if they add more gods, that's already a theory in itself. If they're adding more gods and they're adding the original gods, then I predict that if they add Athena, Athena will probably be block focused. She will be trying to put the little, bubble on you, not deflect focused. And if they add Ares, Ares will probably have some kind of bonus. I'm going to say Ares will probably have some kind of bonus for doing damage. Or might dip into some masochism and kind of be, because I want to say he was. I'm not sure if he was the one associated with like either a legendary boon or a duo boon that was revenge based. I want to say that Ares is probably going to be revenge focused. And if Dionysus gets added, I don't see why Dionysus won't have his dot, but I can see why he wouldn't, because Hestia kind of replaced him in that department. So I would probably say that Dionysus will be more regenerative focused, like more focused on HP gain, or maybe even have some kind of HP regen, and possibly might have, I feel like it would make sense if Dionysus had the best mana boon in the game. Because, all honesty, between Zeus and Hestia's mana boon, because those are pretty hot mana boons. Born Again is definitively probably the better option, merely because of the fact that it fully refills. You can still cast the thing you're charging while doing it, and even though it does prime your mana, it doesn't stay permanently primed in the next encounter, on top of the fact that, much like Zeus's boon, you might say giving up 70% of your mana sucks, but at the same time, you still have time, if you're taking it early, to get more mana. So it doesn't matter. You just have stupid regen. And Hestia's, giving up a boon, especially if it's one you don't give a damn about, for stupid regen, hands down, just why not? So, or no, correction, you have to give up life. Yeah, if it's early, giving up HP for stupid regen, why not? Why not? If it's late, giving up HP for stupid regen, if you have like 200 HP and you're not, taking Chronos hits to the face, all the time, why not? So, Hestia, Zeus are just general best mana boons. Born Again is just, in general, the trump card, though, because they have their situations where they're not as beneficial, because losing that amount of HP and not being able to avoid damage will probably make you feel bad about taking Hestias. Getting rid of that amount of mana and not getting the opportunity to increase your mana will probably make you feel bad about taking Zeus. And that is why, if you want to point out the best, it's Hera's, because Born Again, refilling your mana bar and only doing nothing but priming it for like 10, completely meaningless. There's never a moment where Born Again will probably screw you over unless you are literally spamming specials that much. And if you're spamming specials that much, I hope your build's made for it. Because that's a lot of spamming. But overall, uh, hopefully patch 3 will either my hopes for patch 3 making hexes not ass, um and maybe adding the sixth weapon, and maybe adding the third zone for the surface. If any one of those three things happen, I call patch 3 a plus. Big thumbs up. If none of those three things happen, I don't really know what you're putting in patch 3 because I feel like those are the things that probably at this point we would be expecting, is that we would be expecting the next patch to either have the next zone for the surface or sixth weapon. Honestly, if I was to make a decision about what probably should hold priority, is third zone for the surface. I'd probably make that priority because at this point, yes, early access, yes, games development, but content for the surface is just gonna get stale because there's only so many times you fight Polyphemus, fight Eris before you literally are like, when am I getting the third zone? So if I was trying to make a priority list, I would say third zone for the surface, if not just the rest of the surface, probably the thing needs to happen. The reason I say if not is because I can understand if you don't want to put in the fourth area of the surface, merely because that would probably progress things in the direction of, how we're apparently going to beat Kronos. But for the time being, adding the third zone, probably the best idea. Assuming that there's only 4 zones in the surface. Assuming that there's 4 at least on the surface. I mean, for all I know, the third zone could literally be the end. But that being said, patch 2, again, lots of weapons to test out, lots of builds to try, lots of tears to cry for Val forsaking, and boy howdy, do Hexes suck.